Colleen, we all set up there? We're good? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee for November the 19th. My name is Brad Mitchell, and I'm the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. I'll start the meeting by giving a brief overview of what the Planning Advisory Committee's mandate is, as well as a breakdown of how the meeting will progress. The Planning Advisory Committee consists of 9 citizens of St. John who have been appointed by the city's nominating committee. Our role is to provide advice to Common Council on applications to amend the municipal development plan, zoning bylaws, or Section 59 condition subdivision proposals, along with a number of other possible issues. Our views and opinions are independent. Tonight's meeting will progress as following. Shortly, the committee will vote to adopt the agenda for this evening's meeting. Following the adoption of the agenda, we will do a roll call for the members of the committee. We'll then approve the minutes for the previous PAC meeting and declare any conflicts of interest for this evening's items. Then go through this evening's applications and follow that agenda until it is complete. For each item, city staff will provide an overview presentation. Following this, the applicant will be asked to address the committee. Once the applicant has finished their presentation, the committee may ask follow-up questions. We will then open the public hearing where any members of the public are welcome to address the committee. Each speaker has 10 minutes. We ask that you please avoid repetition of concerns or viewpoints. If you have a large group, we encourage the delegation of a single representative speaker. Once it is your turn to speak, you will be called to the podium. The committee may have questions for you following your address. Please note the committee has read all the letters and comments submitted for this meeting. The committee may ask the applicant to return to respond to any comments that arise during the public hearing. After this, the public hearing section is closed. No further comments may be made by the public or the applicant. At this point, there may only be questions or clarification to city staff by the committee. Please remember that this is a safe space and that we ask for everyone to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. Should anyone interrupting the proceedings will receive one warning to refrain from disrupting the meeting. Should disruptions continue, they will be asked to leave the meeting. Members of the public, you are welcome to remain in the chamber to listen to the debate and decisions of the committee. However, when your item is concluded, you may leave. Should you have any follow-up questions, please contact city staff. Now let's move into tonight's meeting. First of all, we'll do a roll call. First chair, Matthew Deleuze. Second chair, Ann McShane. Councillor Jerry Lowe. Councillor Gary Sullivan. Alshia Aldemary. Peter Pappas. Phil Como. And member Terry Hutchinson is not available this evening. At this point, I'll ask for, where are we? Approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. I have a motion by Phil, seconded by Ann. All those in favor? Passed. Thank you. Does anybody have a declaration of conflict of interest in this evening's meeting? None. Thank you. At this point, I will ask for the minutes for the October meeting. I was not present, so I will not be able to vote, but I will continue to chair. So I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the October meeting. Matthew, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, now let's move into the applications. The first application, let me just open. The applicant is Brad Kierstead, East Point Properties for 24 to 32 East Point Way. Plan designation is Regional Retail Center. Zoning is Regional Commercial Residential. Application is subdivision and variance. The Community Planning Act authorizes the Planning Advisory Committee to grant reasonable variances from certain requirements of the subdivision bylaw. Terms and conditions can be imposed. Thomas? please.
Thank you. This application is proposing to subdivide a portion of the existing development site to temporarily create a lot for construction financing purposes. The applicant is seeking variances from the subdivision bylaw to vary the requirement for to provide lands for public purposes on the condition that the created lot will be amalgamated back into the parent parcel within 3 years' time. The creation of a new lot that does not abut a public street also requires the approval of PAC. Again, the applicant is proposing to subdivide Lot 24-1 from the parent parcel Lot 16-1. Lot 24-1 is intended to exist temporarily in nature in order to facilitate construction financing. The lot is to be amalgamated back into the parent parcel within 3 years of the approval date. If the newly created Lot 24-1 is not amalgamated within the parent parcel, Lot 16-1, after a period of 3 years, LPP will be required. Site is located in East St. John and the East Point Shopping Center. The lot fronts on the west side of Retail Drive and East Point Way, which is a private street. Site location photo. There are conditions that we are recommending to avoid LPP at this time. That Lot 24-1 be amalgamated with the parent parcel, again, Lot 16-1, within a period of 3 years from the date of approval, or be subject to the requirements of the subdivision bylaws land for public purposes. Letters were sent to landowners within 100 meters of the subject property on November 4th, 2024. Notary letters received as of this presentation, and public notice was posted on November 14th. Staff are recommending to PAC that the creation of the new lot, not abutting a public street, and relieving the applicant from land for public purposes dedication or money in lieu dedication for the creation of Lot 24-1 on the following condition: that Lot 24-1 be amalgamated with the parent parcel, Lot 16-1, within a period of 3 years from the date of approval, or be subject to the requirements of the subdivision bylaws, land for public purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee have any questions for city staff? Is the applicant here to discuss this? Is there anybody from the public that would like to come forward on this matter? Second. Thank you. Second request, is there anybody from the public? Third and final. At this point, I will close public hearing. Committee, if you'd like to make a motion, Matthew? Seconded by Councilor Sullivan. Any question? All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Item 5.1. 5.2. The applicant is George Cormier. The location is 9 Austin Lane, PIDS 00403972. Existing is stable residential. Zoning is 1 unit residential. Proposed zoning is low-rise residential. Application type is rezoning and subdivision. Community Planning Act authorizes the Planning Advisory Committee to give its views to Common Council concerning proposed amendments to the municipal plan and zoning bylaw. Common Council will consider the committee's report at a public hearing on Monday, December the 4th. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application before you this evening is for a rezoning subdivision of the site at 9 Austin Lane. The applicant is proposing to construct a 4-unit townhouse on a 0.57 hectare portion of the site that would be rezoned to low-rise residential. It does require a rezoning from the current R1 zoning, and also council assents with respect to the subdivision. This is a site plan showing the proposed subdivided lot. There is an existing dwelling on site in the central portion of the site that would remain, and then the 4-unit townhouse would be constructed at the front of the site adjacent to Kingsville Road. This is a rendering of the front of the 4-unit townhouse. Site location, it is on Kingsville Road in the Milford area on the city's west side. This is a view of the site from Kingsville Road showing the existing house. There were formerly 2 manufactured dwellings at the front of the lot that have been removed by the proponent. This is another site here showing the area where the proposed townhouse units would be constructed. Municipal plan has the site designated as stable residential. Intensification in these areas is guided by policy LU8. In this particular case, the built form and density is similar to that found in the surrounding neighborhood. As well, there are adequate servicing and transportation infrastructure that exist to serve the development. Given this, staff are of the opinion that the proposal conforms to the city's municipal plan. Zoning, the site is currently zoned 1-unit residential. They are proposing to rezone a roughly about 0.6 or 0.57 hectare parcel from R1 to RL. The proposed development meets the zone standards. Staff are proposing a Section 59 condition with respect to required landscaping along the Kingsville Road frontage and the front of the townhouse units. In terms of subdivision, there are council assents required. One would be for money in lieu of LPP for Lot 24-1. And we also have a recommendation for local government services easements and drainage easements, should they be required, as well as a city developer subdivision agreement, should it be required for servicing for the development. In terms of engagement, letters were sent to landowners within 100 meters of the site on November the 5th. And on November 15th, we posted public notice of the upcoming public hearing on the city's website. To date, no letters have been received. Staff's recommendation would be to rezone the portion of the site to low-rise residential, subject to the Section 59 condition relating to landscaping, and to provide the necessary subdivision assents. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee members have any questions for city staff at this time? At this time, if the proponent would like to come forward and state their name.
Excuse me. My name is George Dennis Cormier, and I'm quite satisfied with what took place with the city in regards to it. And if you have any questions,
Thank you. Do the committee members have any questions for the applicant? Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's more of a curiosity question. There's a line that always has stuck with me, and it's that home ownership gives the opportunity for generational wealth, and renting keeps people in generational struggle. So I guess my curiosity is, I think I read in this application that these townhomes, which usually would provide a great opportunity for home ownership, they're going to be rented out. And I'm just, for my own curiosity, I'm just curious why you're choosing to go that route.
well, people would rather live in single dwellings than apartments. And I figured they would stay rented better than an apartment. And it's a great spot, lots of deer. And it's, I think, a real good idea, because there's an apartment going in that area I sold to Lee. And he's putting in apartments. And I'm going to have a reasonable rent. I'm not going to go
Nice.
overboard.
Good.
Because of signal. But that's basically the reason.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking, yeah, you're basically going the opposite way of most people. You like typically rent apartments, and you're building a home for people that will still be rented, as opposed to the other. Yeah, okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other committee members have questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak for or against this application? The second time, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against this application? Last and final, anybody would like to speak on this application? At this point, we will close public hearing. I'll ask whether the committee has any questions or how they'd like to move forward on this. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Lowe. Question? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item 5.3, applicant is Plaza Court Property Holdings, address of 35 University Avenue, PID 55221717, existing plan, local center, existing zoning, general commercial, Application type is a Section 59 amendment. The Community Planning Act authorizes the Planning Advisory Committee to give its views to Common Council concerning proposed amendments to Section 59 conditions. Common Council will consider the committee's recommendation at a public hearing on Monday, December the 4th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is seeking an amendment to the Section 59 conditions that were imposed on the 2016 rezoning of the site. The applicant is seeking amendment of these conditions to construct a drive-through restaurant in the western portion of the site. This shows an air photo overlay of the existing Jean Coutu pharmacy, as well as the proposed McDonald's drive-through that would be constructed in the western portion of the site adjacent to the Millage Avenue, University Avenue intersection. These are renderings of the elevation of the McDonald's with the front or the side rather in the top left, the front elevation down below, as well as the two other side elevations and rear. Site location, it's in the southeastern quadrant of the Millage Avenue, University Avenue intersection. The site was rezoned in 2016 to general commercial, and following that, the existing Jean Coutu pharmacy was constructed. The site is currently vacant. It was formerly used by the city as our fire training facility. Folks may remember there was I think a 3 or 4 story fire training tower on this front portion of the site that has since been demolished. Municipal plan has the site designated as local center. This covers the development of commercial and higher density residential uses in the north end in Milledgeville. The proposal conforms to the municipal plan. It does incorporate landscaping and buffering around the periphery of the site, as well as between the proposed development site and adjacent residential uses. Zoning of the site is general commercial. The drive-through restaurant is a permitted use. The proposed development meets the standards of the CG zone. There's one variance flag that has the access portion of the access aisles reduced from 6 meters to approximately 5.8 meters. That will be dealt with at the building permit stage through a development officer variance. In terms of Section 59 conditions, the approval of any future development site on the site beyond the Jean Coutu was a condition of the 2016 rezoning. So that's the primary reason this application is before you this evening. What staff are proposing is we're proposing to amend the existing conditions with respect to landscaping and buffering. And that will require a landscaping plan detailing landscaping along the site frontages, a tree buffer adjacent to Candlewood Lane, and details of the proposed amenity space at the intersection that is shown on the developer's site plan. We have some conditions with respect to traffic, requiring the developer to be responsible for the construction of a left turn lane into the site from University Avenue, and also responsible for a $60,000 payment to the city towards past crosswalk upgrades in the area and future intersection upgrades at the Millage University intersection. We are retaining conditions related to Candlewood Lane that prohibit access to and from the site to Candlewood Lane, and the existing condition that also requires a 6-meter tree buffer adjacent to Candlewood Lane is being kept in force on the development. We also have an additional condition that should the former fire station site be developed, that a cross-access agreement be provided at the discretion of city staff between the site and the adjacent fire station site. In terms of engagement, we sent letters out on November 5th to folks within 100 meters of the subject property, and on November 13th, public notice was posted on the city's website of the upcoming public hearing. To date, we received 4 letters, 1 in support and 3 in opposition to the development. Staff are recommending amending the Section 59 conditions as outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members have any questions for city staff at this time? Thank you. If the applicant is the applicant here that would like to speak on this matter? You can state your name and if you've read and agree with the staff recommendation.
Yes. My name is Doug Bannister. I'm a property and development manager of Plaza Retail REIT. We're here tonight to seek the approval for the amendment to the Section 59 amendment. Agree with everything that Mark Reed had said. We've been in constant contact with Mark on that, so if there's any questions.
Committee members have any questions for the developer at this time? No. Thank you. If we do have questions, we'll call you back after through the public presentation. This time we'll open the floor. If there's anybody that would like to speak on or against this, please come forward and state your name. I remind 10 minutes. Can you kind of watch that for me, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So short, nobody's going to be able to see me back here. My name is Gina Wilkins, and I am the property manager for the Candlewood Lane, University Avenue neighborhood of townhouses, which is in close proximity to the proposed development. As you know, the board of Property Maintenance Limited did submit a letter in opposition to this proposed development, with the primary concern being the traffic issues at that corner that already exist. I'm sure anybody who's traveled there has probably experienced those traffic issues, especially during the busy times of the day, the morning, and the evening, and sometimes lunch hour as well, when the Tim Hortons and Wendy's are very active, and there's a lot of people trying to get in to get their coffee. This proposal is across the street, but there are a number of issues that I think one needs to consider when one is seriously considering this proposal. I guess the best way to do this would be to say, picture this, and I don't know how to get that thing back on the wall up on the television screen where it showed the intersection. So if somebody else can do that, that would be great, unless it's here in the slides and I can go back, if nobody minds if I do that. Okay. Thanks. Oh, there's a mouse. That's even easier. Just go back to the slide.
Be this one right here?
No, further. That one.
Okay, here, I'll just bring it up. Slideshow. There.
Thanks. It's not there. So I'm just going to very quickly go over this because I don't want to take everybody's time extensively. But if you look at that illustration or picture, you'll see that there is a merge off of Millage Avenue, turning right onto University Avenue. There used to be a bus stop approximately where the trees look like they've gotten bigger. Thanks to a lot of suggestions on behalf of the people living in the area, that was moved. But now we're going to be faced with a similar situation as people are lined up to get into that area if they were turning right and then coming around to get into the McDonald's. And then on the other side is the street where the Tim Hortons is, which you can't see in the picture, but you can see the driveway going in. Cars are already backed up well to Bloom Street, which is that little street that goes into the Shannocks, many times. So now you're going to have people coming down University Avenue, say from the university or the hospital. They're going to be coming down, so that would be westbound on University Avenue, and it's one lane. That picture shows it as two lanes, but that's been changed and is now one lane with bike lanes on either side. So you're coming down University Avenue, and this is where the bigger problem is. And on your right is the line, in the morning is the lineup for the Tim Hortons. And it comes out and it's along University Avenue in front of the Tim Hortons. And now you've got people trying to get into the Jean Coutu McDonald's parking lot, which is on the left. So, you know, inevitably, even if it's not lined up, people are slowed down, right? So now you've got cars on both sides of that one-lane street trying to turn both right and left into fast food restaurants. If the vehicles are of any size, and we do have trucks going through there of any size, I'm not sure whether a car would get through what was left of the lane after there are vehicles on both sides of University Avenue waiting to make right and left turns. So that's an issue. There have been accidents there. as a result of the Tim Hortons lineups where people have pulled out and somebody coming down University Avenue has hit them. I was one of them. And, you know, that was when it was 2 lanes. Probably even worse now, it's 1 lane. So, you know, that's definitely an issue. I had a chance today only to review the complete package that was presented to all of you from the city staff with the recommendation. And there was one part that particularly struck me, and that was where it said that the traffic engineer, the city's traffic engineer, I believe that's what he's called. Anyway, I'll quote this, said, the addition of another high-volume peak hour traffic generator on the subject site presents a concern for traffic engineering staff. They note this increase in traffic will coincide with the existing peak traffic on University Avenue and the Tim Hortons driveway, where mitigation options are already limited. Staff caution that the overlapping traffic flows could exacerbate congestion, making it difficult to manage the associated impacts effectively at this location. They say there exists a degree of risk for increased congestion at the site access driveways that the committee and council should consider in its decision-making. I think that's pretty strong indication that, you know, we haven't done our homework here in terms of how this intersection should be managed. So I also note further along in this same report that there's talk of reconstructing that intersection. Great idea. When we were talking about the other developments that were coming in there, I was here then and suggested that they take the merge or that turn off that goes off of Millage onto University Avenue and make that a proper lighted 4-way stop with traffic lights and the option to turn right, you know, right on a red light, which would give people plenty of time to look up and down the street to see if it's safe to proceed. Further to the traffic problem, so you've got people coming down University Avenue, people turning onto Millage, off of Millage onto University Avenue, and you've got people coming from Millage in the other direction, Millage Avenue, and Woodward. A lot of those people are going to want to go, you know, into a McDonald's, and they're all going to be filtering in there and like coming around the corner, then going veering into the right to try to get into this Jean Coutu McDonald's area. It's already a really big problem, even with just the Jean Coutu there. But now you're talking about adding something that generates a lot more traffic than a pharmacy where 90% of the people, maybe even 95% of the people park and go in. They do have a drive-through there, but I rarely see anybody using it. So, you know, most people going shopping at the Jean Coutu park their cars and go in. Not to say, same with the McDonald's. 90% of the people drive through the drive-through and 5% of the people park and go in. The other thing there's a whole thing here for the municipal plan policy review, which lists all kinds of things that are part of the policy that the staff reviewed. And it's interesting to note that they only pointed out the positives. There's no negatives. But if you read some of this, there's certainly things that one would say, well, why didn't they address that? Like, usually they've required that parking and everything be behind the building. Parking, garbage, you know, the propane tanks and all the rest of that stuff be behind the building and not visible from the street. Not so here. We could go back to that picture if we wanted, but they are proposed to be next to the building, between the building and the drive-through. And the drive-through goes right around in front of Millage Avenue. The parking is all on the corner of University and Millage Avenue. So it's all very visible to everybody. And this is the 3rd time that such development has been, 4th probably, has been allowed despite this stipulation. What do they call it? The Anchorage apartments, their parking lot is not in the back, it's in the front. They were supposed to put some mitigating trees and so on, there's nothing there. Tim Hortons, parking lot's in the front. I know,
1
I'm
minute.
done, 1 minute, okay. So there are also, you'll probably notice in the papers, in the letters, that there were all kinds of other concerns, noise, rodents, the potential for rodents. We already have a very healthy population of seagulls and crows who like to get in the garbage. If you have time to read all of the letters, you'll see that people are very dismayed that this is about to happen here. Water issues, we've had all kinds of water issues there, and now you're putting more pavement, less opportunity for water to be absorbed naturally into the ground, which causes more flooding in the area. I could go on, but a lot of that is in the letters, and so if you wouldn't mind, you could just read those. But we're asking that you not approve this development at this time, because it just doesn't fit with the neighborhood. Certainly something will go there. We don't disagree that something will go there, but it would seem to me and to the people I represent that something more suitable to the area would be more appropriate. Office buildings, health clinic, something that might be a little bit more suitable and wouldn't cause constant drive-through traffic 24/7. Something where people drive in, park, do their business, and leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your letter and your comments. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Second call. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for or against this matter, this application? Third and final call. Yeah, thank you. And does the committee have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a question for the applicant and a question for staff, so what do you want me to hit first?
It is a question for applicant, because once we close.
Yeah, it would be good if
public hearing,
the,
then we can't ask the applicant
yeah,
any questions.
if the applicant could come back down, we'll get through those questions first.
Hi, I think we spoke on the phone actually months ago about Lansdowne, but anyway, nice to meet you. The question I have is about the corner. First off, I was just going to ask about the question about the streetscaping on that corner and the parking lot on that corner. It is a corner, and I don't love it when we put parking on kind of the streetscaping. Could you speak to that if it's required? Is there other design features in this report? There's suggestions and recommendations about the city fire hall site next door and access on that side. Would that change the design and placement of parking and how that corner is treated?
I know there was a few different designs for this site. This is the one we kind of settled on, I guess, in conjunction with McDonald's and us and talking to the city. So to say that it could change, I can't answer that at this time. But,
Okay.
I mean, we're willing to work with the city. We're willing to work with the residents, right? It's something we want to see happen. And I mean,
Okay,
the landscaping is something that we're willing to do.
Doug, can you bring the microphone back up?
The changes to the intersection and all that. I think there's a recommendation there for us to spend $60,000, so we're willing to do that as well.
Yeah, and
so,
the left turning lane as well, and yeah.
so.
Okay, and then recommendation for the site beside. Okay, at least I can tell there's some fluidity there. There's some potential for change there.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate
problem.
that.
Committee members have any other questions for the developer at this time? Yes, we do have another question.
Certainly the neighborhood, as much as you love to have a Tim Hortons, the drive-through for the Tim Hortons at peak times is misery, just because it's so short. Can you talk about the design and how you see McDonald's working?
I can't speak to Tim Hortons or
No, but-
McDonald's. I mean, that's kind of the reason they put the double drive-through in to limit that congestion. I believe you'll see in the drawings, I believe there's a queue for 14 to 16 cars. So, and plus there's a little bit of a parking lot there as well, drive-through, so. I also have Don Good here from EXP, who did the traffic study. I don't know if anybody has any questions that Don could possibly answer, or if you'd like to hear from him.
Yeah, well, maybe that relates, because
Okay.
queuing is a concern for the area. So if you can speak to the queuing and what that'll do to the corner, I'd love to hear it.
You could state your name, please.
Don Good, I'm with the XP. Yes, to answer your question, Doug touched on it a little bit. There is a double order window, and there's a queue of 14 inbound 14 inbound vehicles. There's also enough space before it actually reaches out to University Avenue. There's another 8 queuing spaces there. So there's about 22 or 23 total queuing spaces. I answered some questions for city staff, and I provided an example where we had done a survey of a Tim Hortons where they had the double drive-through. And I don't believe the one here across the street does not have a double drive-through. Excuse me. That makes a big difference. And the one that we surveyed, it had 5, at peak times, it had 5 inbound vehicles in one order window and 4 in the other. And as part of this study, I did do some observation of a McDonald's up in Fredericton. I'm from Fredericton. And they had a queue space of 20 spaces before it backed into the parking area. And in peak times, it's never gone beyond that 20. So I'm pretty confident that with the double drive-through, that the queuing can be addressed on site.
Good. Thank you.
Many members have questions for either the traffic. Matthew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question regarding, I suppose, I'm not sure if it's covered in the traffic study you submitted, or if it's I'm having an inability to read moment. But I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm an economist. So I was wondering, do you know, or did you estimate how many net new trips the McDonald's is anticipated to generate in the area?
In the report, it identifies, and I think staff had it in their report as well, that in the morning peak, for example, the AM, there's 190 plus vehicles that would go in and out combined. Of that, about 50% are pass-by trips. In other words, 50% are already there, and they're just making an intermediate stop on their way to work or on their way somewhere else. And Tim Hortons is very similar that way. It's about 50% new and 50% existing.
Yeah. So my main purpose behind that question, so, I mentioned before, I grew up in Toronto. Don't hold that against me. But there was, I believe at the time, it was the busiest Tim Hortons in Canada, in Pickering off Brock Road, right next to the 401. And it created horrific traffic snarls with people getting on and off of the widest highway in North America to go to Tim Hortons. They were backed up 30, 40 cars deep. They were backed up down the off-ramp onto the highway, people trying to get into Tim Hortons. And their solution was to build a second Tim Hortons on that corner. And people said, you must be maniacs. Why would you do that? And it solved the problem, because suddenly you've doubled or tripled your throughput. You've removed queuing from the roads, and you can get cars on and off the properties faster. So my question here is it possible that the McDonald's will effectively cannibalize traffic that would go to Tim Hortons or Wendy's, them being effectively the only fast food option in Milledgeville? Like, if you have 500 people that are going through there in a day, it's possible that a lot of people would prefer to go to McDonald's and will simply switch.
And yes, there is some of that. I couldn't state what percentage, but that happens quite often. Yes, traffic gets diverted from one side of the street to the other, or from one area to another area as a result of the development.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that it's like, is it likely that some degree of cannibalization will occur?
I believe there will be. I don't think there'd be a huge amount, but I think there would be some.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other committee members have questions? Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak on this? Second call, third and final call. This time I'll close public hearing on this applicant. Committee members have any questions for staff? Go ahead, Ann.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a question, and it's the same question that Ms. Wilkins would have asked in terms of the language in the report. And I had the same thing highlighted, and it was like, it said, the addition of another high-volume peak hour traffic generator on the subject site presents a concern for traffic engineering staff. And then it kind of went on and listed some like things that we should be wary of as a committee. So when I read that, now I am worried. If traffic engineering tells me this committee should be worried, I am worried. So I'm hoping somebody can speak to me of, and it says there's very few ways to mitigate that risk of what that could happen. So help me over the hurdle of why this development would be good for the area if those concerns exist and can't be mitigated.
Yeah, I think a lot of the concerns with respect to mitigation are around the perception of delay. And when EXP did their traffic study for the development, one of the things that they found is that the delay at the intersection, so vehicles traveling through the intersection aren't really impacted by the increased development. Where you see the increased delay tends to be vehicles exiting, say, the Jean Coutu or the Tim Hortons, the vehicles exiting those site driveways onto the site. So that's where a lot of that comes from. Staff don't dispute that it is a busy location, but, there was nothing identified from the traffic impact study that, from a level of service perspective, identified any huge issues with respect to the additional traffic.
Okay.
It's just around,
Thank you.
public perception around delays. And that's, it's one of those things that, drivers get frustrated when there is delays, right? So
there's no genuine safety additional risk from this anticipated? It's really, you're saying that there'd be the perception of risk would be heightened?
It's perception. It's hard to say, is it safe? Is it more safe or less safe? I mean, really, that's typically not what traditional traffic impact studies look at. They look at vehicle delay. It's not a road safety study.
Who looks at safety?
It is something that's looked at in road design, in site design, certain aspects there. Traditionally traffic impact studies focus on vehicle delays at intersections and level of service. How many vehicles can be put through the intersection within a given hour. In terms of safety, safety is a relatively new aspect with respect to traffic impact studies across North America. It's traditionally, and Atlantic Canada, we're a bit late adopters of that. But if you went to some other jurisdictions in Canada, safety in some jurisdictions would be a component of a traffic impact study. It's not a component of a lot of traffic impact studies within Atlantic Canada. So.
Okay, so I have one last question, because, thank you. We've just added bike lanes to that area. So safety is a concern for me in terms of congestion. Do we as a city, even if the traffic impact study and kind of TAC requirements don't speak to this, do we as a city speak to this in terms of what we want for design guidelines in our streets so that they can be shared safely?
Yeah, it would be something that would be looked at when the intersection is done. That would be one of the lenses that when the city does their intersection upgrades, it would be looked at through a safety lens, through a capacity lens, through a multimodal transportation lens, because, streets aren't just for cars anymore, right? It's the right-of-way serves pedestrians, the right-of-way serves cyclists, the right-of-way serves cars and transit and things of that nature. So,
Okay, so somebody's eye is on that.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for city staff? Yes, Councilor Sullivan?
I don't know if it's so much of a question as more of an observation. And I don't know if the traffic studies look at this because it's not a street issue. It's the parking lot issue. But at peak times, the Tim Hortons is queued onto the street, but they made a little lane for that. But if you're coming out of the Jean Coutu, now the Jean Coutu McDonald's, and want to turn left, you're not, because that is permanently queued up for probably 30 to 45 minutes every morning. And then the safety factor that goes on top of that is the folks who are trying to get out getting frustrated and concerned that they're not getting out. I think the long-term solution is once the fire station is dealt with, having another entrance exit on Millage Avenue. But from now until then, like, has that been a consideration? How do we handle that? Like, this is different from the redesign of the intersection, has more to do with the redesign of the entrance and exit, but I know that's also on the list. If staff could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. One of the things we did flag is knowing that the fire station site is coming to market probably, I don't know if it's later this year or 2025 through a request for expression of interest. One of the conditions we did put on the site is that at the discretion of city staff, there be that cross-access agreement when the fire station site is developed. Essentially, it would act as kind of a safety valve for the extra traffic and, make it easier for, once the fire station site develops, for cross-access between the fire station site and the Jean Coutu site and broader access to those developments. So that was put in as a recommended section 59 condition. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does a little bit. Is there anything, because I guess the city has a little bit of power in this because we own that other site, that when that comes to market, that we can accelerate whatever that entrance exit might look like so that, somebody doesn't buy that site and then it's 4 or 5 years down the road when it gets developed and created, right? Like, is there something that we can do to make it happen sooner rather than later?
No, it is a good question. It's something, that if the committee wanted to include that as a broader recommendation to staff in their overall recommendation, I think it's something we could take back and look at. I think one of the challenges is with the fire station site, given its past use as a fire station, it's a fairly wide curb cut for a driveway, right? So I think there'd have to be some improvements to curbing along University Avenue to narrow that up with a more defined entrance, or we'd have folks going every which way if we wanted to do some form of an interim cross-access agreement. So.
Okay, we seem to have a lot of big concrete barriers we can put around places. I'm sure temporarily we could set that up. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for that suggestion on putting it as part of our recommendation.
Peter, you have a question for city staff?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess just to expand on what Gary's saying, if that's our long-term goal anyway, to give up passage through the city site, wouldn't now be the time to incorporate the engineering into that plan?
Again, I think that would be a fair recommendation to make in the committee's recommendation to Common Council for something, for staff to look at as an interim measure.
Thank you.
Prior to the sale of the site.
Yeah, and I would just suggest it could be added as an element. Given that it's a separate property, we wouldn't necessarily be able to condition anything on the fire station property itself. And we'd want to make sure that whatever recommendation that's being looked at, it's worded in a way that enables adequate discussions to occur with, real estate and our traffic and city's traffic engineer to really make sure that interim solution would work, and then how we would deal with any longer term, especially if there is going to be any sale or changing hands of the land, to make sure that that is sequenced in with real estate.
Right. So I guess what I would lean on staff, like, how do we word that appropriately? Because city owns the land right now. If we, the city, said, let's make a second access, we own it. We could do it. And then, somebody who buys it, and it happens to already have a second access. Right? But that's not PAC. That's not us. I get that. So, I guess I'm agreeing, and I appreciate staff's suggestion that PAC making it part of a recommendation to council. Need words. Words are hard.
Yeah, so we would want to do it it could be done as a recommendation, but we'd want to separate it from the recommendation for the section 59 so that it's separate, and it could be something that can be relayed and I think explained and fleshed out in the chair letter, that a PAC would like staff and council to investigate creating a temporary secondary access on former fire station site, and to investigate a more permanent solution in advance of the sale of that parcel.
Yeah, those words are good. So you're suggesting a second motion, so we'll deal with the section 59, because it really doesn't have to do with the property, but it has to do with our concern. And then a second motion asking council to
direct staff to investigate that. And then that way it provides guidance of what you're looking at without tying it to this project, because it is a separate piece of land, but providing enough openness for appropriate solutions to be looked at and discussed.
Shia? Shia, sorry.
Shaima. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Only my concern is, like Anna says, that it is about safety, and especially with kids. This area is full with kids, and they are safe to go and coming out from Tim Hortons, but they using the left side of the intersection. But now we have McDonald's on the right corner without any red traffic or any lights. It is very concerning, especially in the night. It is very dark, and it is very dangerous for them to go and down. Is there any concern for the kids' safety there?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Ann?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So back to Councillor Sullivan and the secondary letter, or secondary recommendation to council. My issue is I want this section 59 recommendation to be conditional on the second access. I don't want it to be second recommendation. I want it to be conditional on a second access, however that happens. So what does that look like?
Mark's got his light on behind you.
No, it was just on from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we would have to look into that, because essentially what you're suggesting is tying the approval of a project to the use and access of a property that's owned by another entity.
Or only approving an application if it's able to provide a secondary access. How that happens in the future with City Hall is a second recommendation. But that would be conditional on how I would feel this would be safe.
Okay, I feel like that is...
Because especially where the design is somewhat fluid in nature, as the applicant has stated, and there's room for all types of design changes. How that happens is up to City Hall, the applicant, you guys. But if we're saying, if the condition is that we want a second access onto Millage Avenue.
So the only ability PAC would have would be, you wouldn't be able to force or tie approval of a development to a second access that's on different property. So you would
I didn't say which property it has to be on even. So that's can be sorted.
So this would basically say that the site would have to accommodate a second access onto Millage, no matter what.
Well, there's only going to be so much.
In this
It has to be so far
case,
from the corner. It has to be so far.
We'd have to defer, we
Yeah.
unfortunately don't have our city traffic engineer here, but without a traffic impact assessment looking and explicitly assessing separation distances on the existing lot.
Well, they would have to do that. That's required regardless. Right?
So I'd like to weigh in on this a little bit because I have a concern that if we say that we have, just one moment, please. If we say that it has to have a second entrance and they put it on Millage Avenue before the fire, right after the fire,
Right.
that's awfully close to the intersection. And then we've made it to me, a real mistake.
Subject to the approval of the development officer. You guys do that? We do this all the time.
We still, and we haven't got a motion, so that's, we're trying different things here. Sorry, you go.
I was, Chair, what's happening here is here, or you not part of that?
I would suggest this would be something we would have to take to Tim O'Reilly and company. I would indicate that without having the technical information behind it, it could be problematic. We also at this point cannot call up the applicant and the applicant's engineer who did the original traffic impact statement to provide comment on what him as an expert would be able to provide, because I believe they did look at different configurations for site, including access points. So I do leave it there.
Okay, here's where I'm stuck. I don't want to say no to an application just because there's details that needed to be sorted out. But the only other option is I'm saying yes to an application in the hopes of something, which I don't think is 100% responsible either. Even though it's likely to happen, I don't know, I feel like that's, I don't know if I should be making that type of a decision without the decision is predicated on the safety for me. So, and I'm not convinced of the safety of the single access based on the report and conversations.
Councilor Sullivan. Then we'll get a motion.
Yeah, I'm prepared to move the original staff recommendation. If there's a seconder, I'll speak to it briefly. So, thank you. I still think there's a weakness in the overall design because of the lack of the second entrance. However, I weigh that against if we require a second entrance, the only way to get a second entrance is to move the current design, which will greatly reduce the queue for the drive-through. And I want the cars off the road. So I kind of, and with respect to Ms. McShane, when I'm looking at this, why is the parking where it is as opposed to flipped around and hidden behind the right? It all has to do, I think, with getting as many cars off the road into the queue as we can. So I don't want to compromise that.
Yeah.
And I guess the other piece of solace I take, Councilor Lowe's down the table, and we've heard this conversation, we understand it, and then we can carry it with a little more weight to our other conversation when the second recommendation will come, which if this one passes, I'll follow up with.
So we have a motion on the floor. Deal with staff recommendation. We have a motion and a seconder. Question. Do we have a question? Like Councilor Lowe has his light.
And I agree, but I don't think there's no way this board can force a driveway on a private piece of land, even though we own it. We could suggest eventually that exit go through that, but it's going to be that fire station has to be advertised that way because it's going to cut the price of poker down. If somebody has to buy something and there's a driveway has to go through it, then it's not going to be the same price. It's not going to be the same situation as exists today when they advertise it. There is no driveway on it today, and I don't think we have the right to do that.
I have a motion and a seconder. Question, you have a question? All those in
Can you-
favor? Oh, sorry.
I just want someone to repeat the motion that's on the floor.
Motion on the floor is move staff recommendation.
Just period, just that.
The discussion was any other recommendation for consideration by council that's strictly regarding the fire station site would be done separately, because it's just really a request to, I guess, research and investigate and find a solution for access off that property. But it is not tied to the approval for this specific lot in question in regards to the section 59s.
I too, I'm prepared to support the application in its current form too. It just, when you look at this from above, this is a corner, one piece of the puzzle's complicating everything. It's too bad Plaza Corp hadn't gotten a deal on the fire station, and they could have incorporated a much more unique design for the whole site. Now we're left with one small piece that's going to be difficult to develop anyway because of it's so small. So it's just too bad it didn't go that way, but I'm certainly supporting the application in its current form.
Thank you. At this point, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? We have, and there is one opposed. Thank you. This item is now done.
Not done.
Oh, we got another?
Well, just,
Yep.
thanks, Mr. Chair. If Plaza Corp is listening through their agent and want to bring their checkbook, call our real estate division. There, in what we have before us from staff for the current site is a whole discussion about tying it into the next site and that requirement. So they're already going to be tied together. And unless that other site is also coming through Jean Coutu, it's going to have a driveway. So my motion is that PAC recommends to Common Council that sooner rather than later, they investigate the second entrance into the site to relieve the concerns about the extra congestion that will be created with the development of the McDonald's.
Through the fire station site.
Yes, through the city-owned fire station site.
Okay, did you get all that, Colleen? You got all that? Thank you, Colleen. So we have a motion, we have a seconder on this. Any question on this? We have a question?
The word investigate, is that what he's using?
Yep.
It's not mandatory.
We can't make it mandatory.
No, I know. That's the
why I
point
said
I'm making.
investigate.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? All those in favor? Opposed? That's passed. Thank you. Anything else on this application? Thank you. Next one. Item 5.4. The applicant, Hughes Surveys and Consultants. The landowner is F. Andrew Simpson Contracting Limited. Location is 0 Alloy Drive, PID 55032924. The existing plan designation is rural resource, parks, and natural areas outside the primary development area, and urban reserve within the primary development area. The proposed plan designation is, we're still calling it heavy industrial? Heavy industrial within the primary development area and park and natural areas. Existing zoning is rural. Proposed zoning is medium industrial and park. The application type is municipal plan amendment and rezoning. Community Planning Act authorizes the Planning Advisory Committee to give its views to Common Council concerning proposed amendments to the municipal plan and zoning bylaw. Common Council will consider the committee's recommendation at a public hearing on Monday, December the 4th, 2024. That's what it says.
9th.
Sorry, Monday, December the 9th. My glasses are getting dirty. What did I say?
You said before that
Yeah.
it does say the 9th.
It is the 9th. Yeah. Thomas,
Okay, thank you.
please help me.
As stated, the applicant is seeking to rezone the subject property from rural to medium industrial. In order to permit the rezoning, it is required to redesignate the subject property from rural resource and urban reserve to employment areas on Schedule A of the city structure, and rural resource area and urban reserve to heavy industrial on Schedule B, future land use within the municipal plan. This application also seeks to expand the primary development area to encompass the property to allow future extension of city services. The site is located at the end of Alloy Drive currently on the west side of the city in the Spruce Lake Industrial Park. Again, the subject site is located at the northern boundary of the Spruce Lake Industrial Park, south of the energy corridor that contains a natural gas pipeline, a crude oil pipeline, a transmission line corridor, as well as Highway 1. The surrounding properties are industrial in nature and contain uses such as warehousing and a transportation depot. The lot is currently designated rural resource, urban reserve, and park and natural areas. The portions of the property designated rural resource and park and natural areas are located outside of the primary development area, and the portion designated urban reserve is located within the primary development area. The existing industrial uses along Alloy Drive and King William Road are designated heavy industrial. This application requires the redesignation of portions of the property from rural resource and urban reserve outside of the primary development area to heavy industrial within the primary development area. The portions of the property that are designated park and natural areas will remain park and natural areas to preserve the provincially recognized wetlands and watercourses. The proposed redesignation and rezoning align with the municipal plan and zoning bylaw in the following areas. Policy LU4 of the municipal plan requires considerations of land availability, impacts on adjacent areas, and conformance with the plan's intent. This proposal seeks to align the zoning and municipal plan designation with the neighboring properties along Alloy Drive, which are, again, medium industrial zoning and heavy industrial designation within the municipal plan. Policy LU8 of the municipal plan requires that a property be located within the primary development area to access municipal water and wastewater services. Currently, the PDA boundary includes only the northwestern corner of the subject property. An expansion of the PDA boundary is proposed to fully encompass the subject property to facilitate future extension of municipal servicing. Policy LU80.1 of the municipal plan requires heavy industrial land use designation to support medium industrial uses within the primary development area where servicing is required. This would affect the subject property, limiting the uses to medium industrial uses. As noted previously, lands adjacent to the subject site are all zoned currently medium industrial, which is consistent with the zoning proposed for the subject site. The proposed heavy industrial designation is the appropriate designation to support medium industrial land uses and zoning similar, again, to the adjacent existing industrial properties along Alloy Drive. The redesignation and rezoning will also allow the subject site and adjacent property to be reconfigured through subdivision in the future. Lastly, Policy LU 110 of the municipal plan requires that redesignations avoid environmentally significant areas. Staff are recommending that 2.32 hectares of the subject property currently designated park and natural area remain unchanged to protect local watercourses, wetlands, and coastal features. The park and natural areas designation preserves natural areas within both the primary development area as well as rural areas as mandated by the municipal plan. As stated previously, the PDA boundary or the primary development area boundary currently includes only the northwestern corner of the subject property. It is not snapped to property lines. An expansion of the primary development boundary is proposed to fully encompass the subject property to facilitate, again, future extension of municipal water and wastewater services. The subject site is the last property at the end of Alloy Drive and is currently zoned rural. The properties along Alloy Drive and King William Road are, again, zoned medium industrial. This application is seeking to rezone to medium industrial, which allows industrial uses with moderate impacts that are limited to the site. The medium industrial zone also limits the intensity of industrial uses to those that are not dangerous or noxious in nature and must be contained within the property itself. The zoning along Alloy Drive and adjacent portion of King William Road, again, are zoned medium industrial, supporting consistency of zoning and municipal designation within this portion of the Spruce Lake Industrial Park. Again, to preserve the 2.32 hectares of the subject property that is designated park and natural areas within a municipal plan, staff are proposing a zoning of park to ensure that they will remain so. Staff are recommending conditions to, Section 59 conditions to prohibit the medium industrial zone use of a scrap and salvage yard. This is a result of the neighborhood input during the Spruce Lake Industrial Park expansion earlier this year. Letters were sent to landowners within 100 meters of the subject property on November 4th, 2024. No letters were received at this presentation, and public notice was posted on November 14th, 2024. Staff are recommending the redesignation of Schedule A. Sorry. I'll go back for this. Schedule A, this is from Rural Resource and Urban Reserve to Employment Area on Schedule A of City Structure. On Schedule B, Rural Resource Area and Urban Reserve to Heavy Industrial. And the extension of the Primary Development Area, as well as rezoning to 25.19 hectares of the subject property from rural to medium industrial. Again, rezoning 2.32 hectares from rural to park. And again, the Section 59 conditions prohibiting the industrial use of a scrap or salvage yard within the medium industrial zone at this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Does committee have any questions for staff at this time? Is the applicant here that would like to speak on
Yeah,
this?
I do.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Lowe.
The following uses for the IM zone, scrap or salvage yard, could we add shredder to it? Like, I mean, to say that,
So
it's a shredder that
yep.
is a problem.
So the
What's the
shredder
problem?
is part and parcel with the definition of a scrap and salvage yard.
It's written somewhere that a shredder is part of it?
Yep. So we don't have a definition for shredder, but it is within the definition of a scrap and salvage yard.
Thank you. The applicant, if you could state your name and if you agree with staff recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Rick Turner here on behalf of FF Andrews Simpson Contracting. What's driving this application? Simpson Group have been very successful in the industrial park for developing things. And some of the property that they have there is very unutilized. They have laydown areas, don't require services, right along King William Road. So what they're under now is pressure from people to buy service sites. So they're looking, okay, let's move our laydown area someplace else for our equipment, this is the selected location for that. So what's driving it is prosperity in the industrial park, I guess I'd put it. So that's what's driving the application. When we did go through the thing of expanding the industrial park, we were sensitive to the fact that there is a shoreline there. The buffers that we've left are between 100 and 200 meters, well above what normally the province sets out for protection. So as far as the staff recommendations, in favor of the staff recommendations, the reference to a salvage yard, the Simpsons one time owned a salvage yard, and that's on Paddy's Hill Road. They've sold that business. They're out of that business, have no intention going back into it. So this is really setting it up for future development to expand the park.
Thank you. Many members have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anybody from the public would like to speak for or against this application? Second call, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against this application? Last call, is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this application? At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing and ask for a committee's discussion or motion on this matter. I have a motion to move staff recommendation by Councilor Lowe, seconded by Matthew. Luce. Any question? All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one other motion I'd like to make on that, if we could. Just a recommendation for council.
Yes.
The scrap and salvage errors keep coming up repeatedly, and they seem to cause lots of controversy with neighborhoods in terms of if they should be a medium industrial, and we're consistent in how we've been approaching this. Can we make a recommendation to council just to remove scrap and salvage yard from the uses under medium industrial, to put that to bed?
We have a motion and we have a seconder. Colleen, did you get all that information to make it a good motion? Thank you. I have a motion by Ann and seconded by Gary. Any question? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now on to item 5.5. Applicant is KL Concepts. Landowner is KL Concepts Limited. Location is 49 Quinton Avenue. PIDs 55031827, 55031819, and 004022651. Plan designation is stable residential. Existing zoning is 1-unit residential. Proposed zoning is mid-rise residential. The application type, zoning bylaw amendment. The Community Planning Act authorizes the Planning Advisory Committee to give its views to Common Council concerning proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw. Common Council will consider the committee's recommendation at a public hearing on Monday, December the 9th, 2024. Staff, please, Chris.
Thank you. As stated, this application is seeking to rezone the subject property to permit the development of a 10-unit residential building and to align the existing legal non-conforming 10-unit residential building to an appropriate residential zone. This is a photo of the existing legal non-conforming 10-unit apartment building. And this is a photo of the location where the proposed 10-unit apartment building would be located. The subject site is located on the west side of the city in the Quinton Heights neighborhood. The neighborhood is predominantly residential and is located nearby to L'Arche Memorial Park at the intersection of Hillcrest Drive and Quinton Avenue. The subject site is also located close to the Fairville Boulevard retail corridor. The subject site is designated stable residential within a municipal plan. Within the stable residential designation, housing of almost every form and density may be found, and both existing neighborhood context and the compatibility within the municipal plan goals will determine suitability of new proposals. The project aligns with the municipal plan by following policy LU 88, which ensures that development is appropriate for the existing neighborhood and with municipal and has access to municipal servicing. The proposed development incorporates various building and landscaping designs that complement the surrounding area's existing built context. The building's design has also incorporated various design elements to promote a dynamic facade by utilizing various shapes, colors, cladding materials, sizes to combat monotony while referencing the existing 10-unit legal non-conforming building. Policy UD 9 ensures that development proposals generally conform to the general urban design principles as outlined in the municipal plan. The proposed building design has incorporated various design elements to promote a dynamic facade, again by utilizing various shapes, colors, and cladding materials to combat monotony. Policy I-2 considers whether amendments to the zoning bylaw should include conditions around aspects of development, such as type of use, height and lot coverage of any proposed building, traffic generation and transit access to and from the site, and parking. The proposal aligns with considerations of Policy I-2 and mid-rise residential zone, other than the required setback variances. Conditions are being recommended on providing 100% of amenity space on site. Complementing the surrounding land uses, including nearby townhomes and the existing multi-unit residential building, as the area's residential diversity increases. The subject site is currently zoned 1-unit residential. Although the existing 10-unit building is a legal non-conforming use and is permitted to exist within the 1-unit residential zone, the proposed development provides an opportunity to rezone the subject site to mid-rise residential, aligning the existing 10-unit residential building of the property with an appropriate zone. The proposed 10-unit building require variances. The proposed 10-unit building will require variances to reduce the side yard setback from 2.5 meters to 2 and removes the front yard setback from 6 meters to 4. These variances are not out of character within the neighborhood. The reduced front yard setback will allow the development to incorporate private amenity space such as balconies, enhancing the building's design, character, and adding vibrancy to the facade. Staff are recommending Section 59 conditions that limit the development to the proposed footprint, height, massing, and overall building design. This condition ensures the project scale is fixed while allowing flexibility in unit count during the final design phase. An additional condition related to the provision of amenity space is proposed as well, which would require the placement of additional balconies on the front street-facing facade of the building, enhancing the building's character, as well as providing 100% of required amenity space as dictated by the zoning bylaw to be provided on site. Letters were sent to landowners within 100 meters of the subject property on November 4th. 12 letters were received in opposition were received, and a petition was received as well. Public notice was posted on November 14th, 2024. Staff are recommending to rezone the subject property from 1-unit residential to mid-rise residential, and to impose Section 59 conditions that limits the development to the proposed footprint and requires that 100% of amenity space is provided on site, as well as balconies on the front facade. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee have any questions for staff at this time? Nothing. Question, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for city staff. So we've reviewed this or a very similar application from the owners of 49 Quinton before. Do you recall what the total square feet for the previous application was, and how this application differs in any substantial respect from the one that we refused last year?
So the building footprint itself has not changed. It's just the number of units within. So the units have actually gotten, proposed to be bigger than they were previously, but the building footprint itself has not changed.
Okay, so the issues that we raised with setbacks and massing and whatnot still apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff at this time? Yeah, go ahead.
Just the amenity space, I might have missed it. Was it all 10 you're recommending, all 10 units?
Yep. So within our bylaw, we have it's after 6 units, you must provide 5 square meters of amenity space per unit. That can take the form at this current time as common and or private. In this instance, we're adding more conditions on ensuring that the amenity space is provided on site in a specific format as well for the front balconies of the facade to help improve, the overall look from the street.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from committee at this time? Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to start off by just asking a question about the appropriateness of the zoning here. So it's 10 units. When this originally came, I think it was 14 units. And one of the kind of discussions around the table was about is this reasonable? And where do we put, where, how much density and where should we be putting it? At the time, we were starting to get comfortable with 6 units and 4 units in neighborhoods. And then we talked about, on primary corridors and corners where height, more units and more density might be appropriate. So I was excited to see that the city is going to be revising their zoning for to permit more density. So I went digging in to see what we're proposing, and even in the proposed density, we're still only talking about 4 units in this zoned neighborhood. And if it was an intensification, it's still only 6. And so it's not on a primary corridor, still not on a corner. Tell me why I'm excited about it. Thanks.
I will note that the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw so far are one of many to come. If only it were that easy to get everything done at once. Unfortunately not. But it's also not uncommon across the city to have RM in lower density neighborhoods. It really depends on the application that's brought forward and the proposed development. And that's compared, with the municipal plan and the zoning to determine whether or not it's an appropriate fit, which in this case we find that it is appropriate.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, but thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Matthew?
Sorry, I actually have one more question for staff. So if this was conceivably rezoned to RM, what is the maximum size that you can build under RM if hypothetically in the future, somebody decides, well, I'm going to buy this, knock these two buildings down and build whatever the maximum allowable, now that I have the RM zoning, what could you conceivably put on this lot?
At the current time, the max is 14 meters for height. But with the Section 59 conditions that we're imposing, it does limit the building to its current proposed massing. So it's worded in a way that if something changes or something needs to be kind of reworked, that the overall intent of the size of the building remains the same.
Okay, so the Section 59 conditions would apply even if they decide to demolish both buildings and rebuild?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time from city staff? All right, at this time, we'll bring the applicant forward, please. You state your name and whether you agree with staff recommendation.
Good evening, Council and Mr. Chairman. My name is Gavin McCrodin, and I'm a director of KL Concepts, the applicant for this rezoning proposal. And I do substantially agree with the proposal put forward by city staff. Another restriction that was intended to be included was an actual restriction to the unit count. I've also had a chance to read the letters and petitions that was signed by the concerned neighbors. And I want to just make it very clear that the expectation is not to get through the zoning proposal with a 10-unit application and then revert to 14 or more. So not just the footprint, square footage and height of the proposal, but also the unit count being restricted to 10 is well within reason in my expectations.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any questions for the applicant at this time? Councilor Lowe?
Did you go into the neighborhood and talk to the other homeowners regarding this project?
Yeah, so it was probably a little more than 12 months ago when we made the decision to withdraw the application for 14 units after not having PAC support and the outcry from the community. And we took it back to the drawing board with city staff and the team at Envision to sort of try to identify ways that we could move forward. And the intention at the time was to eliminate the need for parking variances and potential for off-street parking and reduce the unit count to 11. It was an afternoon almost a year ago, if not perhaps a little more than a year ago now, that discussion was had with neighbors, canvassing 100 homes or more in the neighborhood, yes.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry. I never heard what you said, Danny. You're talking to me instead of the mic.
Sorry about that. So yes, the short answer is yes. A little over 12 months ago, I communicated with residents our intentions to reduce the unit count after the PAC meeting and not having PAC support with the 14 unit counts because of concerns around traffic and parking primarily. I communicated that, handed out flyers, let them know that we've heard their concerns, and that these were our planned adjustments to be made, and we hope to get some support. It was also clear to me at that time that there were some potential concerns around the previous proposal and the acknowledgement that our intentions were to have affordable units. And while canvassing the neighborhood, some of the neighbors made it quite clear to me that they were concerned that the affordable housing was going to be low-income, subsidized, potentially bring undesirable neighbors to the community, which I did my best to share the formula for what constitutes an affordable unit and affordable housing. And that number for a one-bedroom apartment, say in St. John today, is in the neighborhood of $1,200. And all the tenants we've rented to at or around those rates at the existing building bring with it great tenants, retirees, professionals, trades, hardworking tradespeople, et cetera. So I did my best to communicate that as well while going door to door.
The second question, this might not be your fault. You applied for rezoning, and there's an application for sale saying that it's liable, it'll go through, so they know more than we do, that's for sure. and it's 1.5 million, which is 500,000 more. So to a layperson, which I guess I am now, it looks like you went to get the rezoning, and I'm not saying that you wrote this up, right? Whether it's a real estate, to get the rezoning, so the rezoning's worth $500,000. That's how I look at it, right? Which, that turns me off.
Fair.
That I can see somebody come here and put that out there and have a few people object. I know exactly where it is. I carried mail there in the 70s, right? I'm well aware of it, right? I'm well aware of the barn. But to me, it looks like the rezoning to somebody was a $500,000 gift. So anyways.
So I'll comment on that if I may. You're absolutely right. I didn't give a realtor a price. I didn't encourage the language to be used. In fact, my wife and I discussed it. To some extent, we were turned off by it. I'll also acknowledge that the application in our discussion with city staff to submit this revision began in the summer months, July. I think we submitted the application in August. Only at the very beginning of October did another opportunity come up that I may pursue that would require a substantial amount of capital, which this building is tying up a lot of. I'll take note of your comment that the rezoning itself is what is a $500,000 windfall. As you may be aware, multifamily residential real estate typically trades on what's known as a capitalization rate or cap rate, which is a function of revenue, expenses, and the purchase price. Organic turnover of units since our ownership began 2.5 years ago has yielded another 40%, close to 50% of gross income for the building. Sure, we've had increased expenses with inflation, and we've put some money back into the building with some unit updates and a new heating system and things like that. But I'd argue that the price that the realtor decided to market the building at is less tied to the rezoning per se compared to the gross rent change over the last 30 months. And I'd also just take a moment, if I may, to let everyone know that the turnover has been entirely organic. Our rental increases have been, with or without rent caps, have never exceeded 3.5% or 4%. We've got tenants that are well under market, is listed in the listing, in fact, what people are paying. So we've never rent evicted anybody. We've never evicted anybody. It's just been organic turnover of some of these older tenants and the current market rents that we're getting.
And you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I was going to ask about the sale, because I'll just talk and then you tell me where I'm wrong. I like that the revised one allows for, there's enough parking that's required, because I think that was a concern. There was no sidewalks and kids are all walking in the street and everything, but other people park there as well, so it wouldn't just be you. Right. But still, it alleviates some of that concern, so I appreciate that. When we're talking about setting like precedent in a neighborhood of adding more density, because neighborhoods aren't comfortable with it yet. Like, we're trying to introduce gentle density, and this is a little beyond even what they're anticipating, where we're immediately going. How do I get people comfortable when I don't know who's buying and who's going to build? Like, if you're selling it, like, it's difficult for me to set precedent with an approval to add some of that density when I don't have the confidence in the confidence that it isn't going to backfire and then make it rotten for everybody who wants to build more density.
I'm sorry, can you repeat just that very last bit where you said?
I don't know, what did I say?
So you said, how do you get the confidence, not knowing who's going to potentially purchase the property, and then?
I just want to be sure that, like, we have the confidence that that whoever comes in, I guess, like, when I meet you, I'm like, you're lovely. And I'm like, okay, you've already got a building, you've been making changes, you've been dealing with staff. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. But then it's up for sale and it's like higher. And then I know in the report it speaks somewhat to affordable housing, but the price of that lot alone, I'd be shocked if they could get affordable housing by the buyer that goes in there, but I don't know. You would know that probably far better than me going through the process. So I guess it's a devil I don't know, but it will be set. It's a devil I don't know that'll be setting precedent.
Fair. So I've entertained a handful of offers on the property. The interest from potential buyers does in some cases include the development lot, and in others I've countered with, you buy the existing barn and I'll carry on with my development project. Where the chips ultimately fall remains to be seen, but I think with any of the potential buyers that have shown interest, one of them has a condition that this gets approved, so be it, as you would expect. And ultimately it's the property and the zoning that the council and committee have to be comfortable with. It's not a person.
For sure, 100%. Yeah, but we're also, you gotta remember, we're outside. If I just went by the letter of the law, I'm saying no.
Mhm.
Right? So there's, because like what we have kind of on, even where we're shooting the puck says single family home, that density is gonna move to 4. So it's still appropriate to make applications to say, I want to add density to these areas. We're like, okay, this sounds great. But I also like to know what the design's going to look like, because whoever comes in may have a different design. Like, they can keep the parcel, but change, like, anyway.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's more questions. That's, I guess, will they have a third party property manager, or will they manage themselves? Are they on site? Are they not? All those things make a difference in me assessing risk of adding precedent-setting density. And is 10 huge? No, 10 is not a gigantic or ginormous amount, but anyway, I'm just putting that out there. Thanks.
So again, it's too early to know where the chips may ultimately fall. The most interested buyer is a real estate agent himself with a good experience in owning investment properties, and he happens to self-manage. Whether or not he ultimately ends up with the property, it's too early to know.
Okay. I appreciate your candor. Thanks.
Are there any other questions at this time for the applicant? All right, thank you. We may call you back.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure we will. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against this application. Please come forward, state your name.
Mr. Chairman, committee, it's good to be here. I enjoy these discussions. It's very interesting. My name is Jody Clifford with Envision St. John. We're here just to speak in favor of this application, the rezoning. I read the report. It's well written and covers a lot of the bases. I think the good news is over the last 3 years, the city's been growing substantially and is projected to continue to grow in the next few years ahead of us. And what that means really is that we get to enjoy some of the fruits of growth, because when I used to sit over in that chair, we were declining and there's no development pressure. But the bad news with development pressure is our neighborhoods do change and things do get a little more densely packed and things have to go up a little bit. And I think part of the pressure points with a community that's growing is that we have to accept that it's growing and we need to have a little more gentle density, especially in spaces where the city's invested in infrastructure, invested in schools and community centers and tot lots and all that stuff. So it's important, I think, that we look at development as an opportunity to ease into that growth pattern that we're experiencing and allow the city to build within its service boundaries. So we support this application and think that the staff covered the bases well.
Thank you. Maybe you have any questions for this? Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for or against this application? You could state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Savoy. I live at 1284 Manawagonish Road. And I spoke against this proposal last June when committee voted 8-1 to deny the request. Planning advisory at that time recognized that the scale of mid-rise does not fit Quinton Heights and strongly encouraged the applicant to engage with the neighbors. Tonight, I'm asking that you again deny this request, as over the last 17 months, nothing has changed. July 9th, only 24 hours before the scheduled public hearing, is when the applicant walked the neighborhood. He advised that he would reduce the proposal to 11 units, and I would like to clarify, he was the one that was suggesting that he would remove affordable units. We had no concern about affordable units. We had multiple other concerns that I will mention tonight, but he kept bringing up that he would get rid of affordable units and that he would make sure that it was only quality residents. We have no issue with affordable housing. I would say that was really the only highlight of the original 14 unit was the high percentage of affordable units that were being offered in it. But we have multiple other concerns, and none of those concerns have changed over the last 17 months. I specifically asked him during that walkabout to consider gentle density options and why that wasn't an option, and he said it was because he didn't consider it sufficiently profitable. They tried to reassure neighbors that this wasn't a flip. And apart from that last minute walk around the heights, there's been no communication from the owner in relation to this new renewed application. Tonight, the proposal is referencing 10 units and lists far fewer variances than last year. But Section 59 is going to allow flexibility in unit count as long as the footprint remains. And this footprint is the exact same as the one that was proposed for 14 units. So if rezoning is granted, 14 is immediately back on the table, and all of the variances that aren't referenced in this report is going to be required. In 17 months that have passed, the proposal and concerns on how it would negatively impact our neighborhood have not changed. The main concern of the neighborhood is strained infrastructure, specifically sewer. The applicants themselves spoke to issues that they had. When here last year, they were asked where they were in the CMHC funding process, and they indicated only early stages, in part because, quote, there was infrastructure issues that had to be addressed as far as water, wastewater, and sewage, end quote. Later, a resident spoke to a sewage backup that she had within only a couple months of moving in, and during expensive repairs was made aware of several others in the neighborhood with similar experiences. So when asked to speak to infrastructure problems in relation to sewer specifically, city staff responded, quote, there were capacity concerns identified, end quote. Clearly, there are issues in the neighborhood with infrastructure, and since being here last, that has not changed. We've had no upgrades, and we are not on the list for upgrades. With all of this information, why is there still recommendation to rezone, which heightens the risk of damage and disruption to our neighborhood properties? Concerns also remain with parking and traffic. The report suggests 10 spots for each building, but the current building regularly has 10 plus vehicles there, so there will inevitably still be on-street parking. This raises safety concerns for pedestrians who use Quinton without sidewalks as a corridor to access the playground and both school and transit bus stops, as well as snow removal concerns for when plows are trying to clear around parked cars. Keep in mind, Section 59 can bump up that unit count and then brings in the need for a parking variance. Last year, 4 affordable units were planned, but if unit count goes back to 14 and affordable unit count doesn't go back to 4, the variance is going to be to an even greater degree than last time. Last year, when asked of plans to update the barn, owners indicated plans for paving, painting the parking lot lines, and landscaping. During that last-minute neighborhood walk, they said that we'd see property updates very soon, and that garage would be coming down by the end of summer 2023. 17 months later, none of those things have happened. Last June, there was discussion around this table if it is best practice to use a non-conforming lot as a yardstick to say it's now permissible to expand that use throughout the neighborhood. A number of members echoed opinions that they could not defend using legal non-conforming use as a precedent to allow further development of the same nature. And today, the report is still referencing legal non-conforming use as rationale to support the rezoning and expansion of the same use. So with the same proposal, no upgrades to our sewer system, and a number of other concerns that have remained unchanged from last year, what has changed in 17 months? So first, yes, the city is working on zoning bylaw reform, and it's going to be presented at public hearing only 1 week after our proposal goes to public hearing. And just as PAC encouraged gentle density, the bylaw reform suggests strategies that can implement gentle density with an infill allowing 4 units on this lot, a strategy that Quinton Heights is supportive of, and we've been saying for the last 17 months we are supportive of. This is a strategy that the city bylaw reform suggests can increase housing access without changing the character of existing neighborhoods and without overwhelming existing infrastructure, the exact issues that a mid-rise rezoning is going to cause or worsen here. Last year, when asked why they consider it compatible to go from single-family homes to what would then be 2 mid-rise properties and then immediately back to single-family, City staff said that they crafted the proposal around future plans for increased density along Manawagonish. So if those plans were in reference to this upcoming bylaw reform, the map of your proposed zoning changes still don't support this. It still shows that the property fits a vision for an infill strategy of up to 4 units, not mid-rise. And it's only the lots that are immediately off of that main thoroughfare that are identified for a slightly more densification of 6. On Shape Your City St. John, the bylaw reform boasts adding missing middle housing, that gradual increase of housing types that fall between single detached homes and mid-rise, not single family, mid-rise, single family. My understanding on new zoning bylaws is that some revisions, specifically for mid-rise, are going to lessen or ease restrictions on minimum lot size. So perhaps this is why that variance is not included tonight. In the new bylaws, really one of the only changes that's going to increase the requirement on a mid-rise lot is enhanced buffering between adjoining lots through landscaping and increasing the setback. It'll go to 3 meters plus 1 meter per additional story. But this proposal is listing a variance to reduce the side setbacks from 2.5 meters, the current bylaw, to 2 meters. Is 2 meters even enough to keep that current tree line between the adjoining lot? And I guess part of the concern with this too is, are we considering current bylaws, because we're not talking about the minimum lot size and the sheer number of variances that showed last time that mid-rise doesn't fit here? Or are we looking at new proposed bylaws, which this side setback shows we're still not meeting the minimums without requiring variances? Last year, when asked if they plan to build or prep the lot for rezoning with someone else, the response was, quote, "Our plan is to develop this exact building and hold it," end quote. Which brings up the only other change since we were last here. 49 Quinton is up for sale. And the real estate listing has that quote of current owners has an application into the city of SJ to build another 11-unit building on the property. We do believe there is a very good chance this will be approved, also increasing the value of the land and potential, end quote. Pending sale of this property calls further into question the credibility of the application, as the current owner cannot confirm what the details or scopes of any actual development is going to be. The report says 10 units. The real estate listing says 11. Section 59 offers 14. So actual development details aren't going to be known, and because they'll be up to a new and an unknown purchaser. Consequently, once rezoned, a new owner could pursue far more extensive development. Yes, you have Section 59, which suggests limitations on height and footprint, but other projects tonight requested amendments. So can a new owner come in and request an amendment to go bigger and higher? That's just going to strain our infrastructure and our neighborhood even more. With respect, it appears that the owner sees this property purely as an investment vehicle, looking to flip a property that they purchased for $1 million less than 3 years ago. They have no long-term interest, as they've previously claimed. If rezoned, city planning is going to get incentives for an increased unit count. The owner stands to make $500,000, but the residents are going to be left to live with the aftermath. Since PAC's decision last year on this same application, there has been no material change to justify PAC reversing its determination on this. I have again submitted a petition, 190 signatures, show that we remain overwhelmingly opposed to this application. But I would like to stress, we do not oppose all forms of development. We recognize that St. John needs development, and we support reasonable and appropriate development. Yes, this site offers potential. It's a prime example of where those planned zoning bylaw reform can implement gentle density. Use the infill strategy, a strategy that positively benefits housing supply, doesn't require us to keep going through this rezoning process, and it's going to be more reasonable and appropriate. Development should be addressed in a responsible manner that helps create solutions for housing access, but doesn't create new or exacerbate existing problems. This proposal does not represent responsible development, and it risks detrimental impacts to the existing property owners. For these reasons, we are respectfully asking you that you maintain your previous decision and reject the application for mid-rise rezoning and development. Thank you.
Thank you for your well-written remarks. I appreciate that. Do committee members have any questions? No questions. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Please come forward and state your name. 10 minutes, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Terry Hunter. I'm aware of your opening comments where you said don't repeat what's already been said, so I'm not going to do that much. I just believe that there's a lot of credibility issues to the application, as Cassandra has outlined in her presentation. So I'll leave it at that. I have never been contacted by the applicant. The first time I saw him was tonight. Never had any contact from him previously. The other small point that I would make, a couple of years ago, there was a couple of properties rezoned on Wilson Street. The idea at the time, I believe the developers had come in from out of town and they were going to do wonderful things. They got the rezoning that they wanted. They relisted the land for sale and it still sits empty. And I'm just concerned that something like that could happen here, except in reverse, that the development gets a little bit bigger than is proposed. And certainly as a resident of Quinton Heights, when it was the issue of sewage issues was raised with me, that's obviously a concern. I've lived in that neighborhood for many, many years. We did have water pressure problems at one point, which the city of St. John denied that we had, and we did have them. They've since been corrected. But certainly that would be a major concern. So anyway, I appreciate your time, and I won't reiterate the points that have been so well raised previously.
Thank you for coming forward, making your points. Councillor Lowe, you have a question?
Yeah, address, where he lives.
Sorry, can you state where you live, please? Sorry. Yes.
You say. Where you live?
Fenton Drive.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That's it?
That's all.
Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak for or against this application? For the second time, is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this application? Third and final time? Would the committee like to bring the applicant back, or is there any questions for the applicant at this time, or are we satisfied and have questions for staff? Looks like we're good. So at this point, I'll close public hearing and ask if there's questions for city staff or motion, or how would you like to proceed?
I've got questions for staff.
Pardon?
I have questions for staff.
You question for staff? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for staff regarding, the Section 59 conditions on it fix the general size and morphology of the building, as you already explained. So is there anything preventing, for example, the applicant from, after this gets approved, they decide we're going to go from 10 units back to 14, and then they don't put any more parking in? Would they be within if they move back from 10 to 14 without adding any additional parking and keeping the building morphology the same, would they be within city's parking guidelines?
No, they could theoretically, but they would also have to receive variances for parking. And we've been having conversations with the Parking Commission, and they are clamping down on providing parking variances across the city. A lot of neighborhoods are at capacity, and it's just not an appetite that they have to provide.
So how many how many off-street parking stalls do they have to provide per unit?
One per unit.
Okay, it's one per unit.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other committee members have questions for staff? I know I have a question for staff. There's been a number of conversations regarding the infrastructure of water and sewage. Where does that stand? Is that an issue? Is that perception? Is that, can somebody from city give us a rundown a little bit on the infrastructure capacity. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Mrs. Savoie and Mr. Hunter as well, thank you for addressing these questions. It was a frequent point of concern in the letters during the review for this application process. I had the opportunity to speak on this application when it was first read last year, and I did indicate that there were some concerns over the capacity of the infrastructure in the area, and I'd like to offer some clarifying comments on that to perhaps give a little bit of context to those comments and also alleviate some concerns. Modeling was performed on the theoretical flow demands that were submitted to our department last year. St. Joe Water undertakes modeling of these applications to determine if there's adequate capacity in our water main, in our potable water supply, and the provision of sanitary sewerage. Both the supply of domestic water and sanitary sewerage capacity during dry weather are sufficient. There are no concerns in those regards. The capacity concern that was identified is during wet weather events. Currently, Quinton Avenue is serviced by what is generally referred to as a combined sewer. This combines stormwater runoff with your sanitary wastewater. It is an antiquated system. It generally presents capacity concerns. Those are the ones which were identified. There are provisions that can be made to alleviate and address the additional flows that would go into that system, but those are usually contemplated at the time of the building permit application. We would subject any of these applications to the requirements of our storm drainage design criteria manual. The application would require a stormwater submission that is prepared by a professional engineer. That submission would need to demonstrate in a clear manner, and we would validate this submission at the time of the permit application, that no adverse effects would be created and that no additional water would be introduced into that combined sewer. In short, we would not allow any development to proceed that would make the problem any worse than it is currently.
Thank you. Have I opened up a can of worms here? Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Small can. I'm very used to and comfortable with stormwater runoff, but we're not talking about just introducing stormwater with this development. We're also introducing 10-ish homes that would be flushing into the same system.
Yep, that's a good question.
When you speak to no more addition overall, is that just the stormwater or is that all-inclusive?
So it's all inclusive. We consider both of those flows together. It's important to understand that the peak flows that are generated during rainfall events are orders of magnitude higher than what we receive during sanitary flows. The sanitary flow demands for this were computed at less than 1 liter a second during peak demand situations. Stormwater flows are often measured in the tens, hundreds, even in cubic meters per second. So literally orders of magnitude higher demand requirements. That being said, we would offset any increase in sanitary sewage demand from the allowable stormwater amounts. So we would require the design engineer to demonstrate that an amount proportional to the additional load on the sanitary sewer is deducted from the stormwater contributions from the site. And that can be achieved through provision of storage systems, underground storage systems, to collect and contain the stormwater, allow it to percolate into the ground, and to convey that in a controlled manner into the municipal system.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for city staff at this time? Do I have a motion? Where do we go from here? You like to make a motion? Go ahead. We have a motion to reject, and we have a seconder to reject staff recommendation. Question?
Quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm in favor of the recommendation, but I guess I was taught if you're going to vote against something, I should probably say why. I was reminded that when this application was before us, I didn't like the step up then, and we spoke to the step from single family homes to something 4 to 6 to the 10 that's already there. And there's nothing new here that's kind of changed my mind on that. I really worry. I get it. We need housing in St. John. We need But I mean, if we could take this neighborhood and if we could have folks open up to granny suites and have the homes that are there double up, then we don't need the 10 on the corner. We can have a 4 or 6 that's coming, as was mentioned, to step up. So for me, this is just, I just don't like the look of single, big. And this still is big for me.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, I also am going to agree, but should we not legalize the barn, even whether this is passed or turned down? Like, there's 2 things here. The barn was built in the 70s or the 50s, I think, right? But should we not legalize that now? Because it's not legalized now. And if this is turned down and we don't do it, it's still not legalized.
So I'll provide some clarification on that. So I think a lot of people maybe don't have a full understanding of legal nonconforming use. So legal nonconforming means that it was actually built legally. So got the appropriate permits and approvals at the time they went ahead and did the project. And because of changes in bylaws that have occurred over the years, that specific use is no longer in that zone. So the use is legal. It's allowed to continue to function as it is in perpetuity into the future. As part of the proposed rezoning, it would have been an effort to clean up essentially the zoning of the property and to align the legal nonconforming use with an appropriate zone so that they align into the future. If the rezoning was not undertaken, it wouldn't change anything. The use would continue with the status quo. It would be up to the PAC and the applicant to choose to move forward with rezoning just a portion of it to legalize. But essentially it wouldn't necessarily change how that site is operating now. It would not necessarily force or require any enhancements or improvements to the site.
It would put it in the conformity of the zone. So it would put it in the zone that's over there now. That's all I'm saying. I'm reading from the conclusion of whoever wrote this. I mean, this was the conclusion was that we recommend this. I'm saying if it's turned down, I'm thinking that we should put the barn and rezone it to the way it should be. That's all I'm saying, right?
Thank you. So I have a motion to deny staff recommendation. I have a seconder. Question. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes this matter. Item 6, any new business? The next meeting is next Tuesday. We'll see you all next Tuesday. Do I get a motion to adjourn? Matthew and Gary, thank you very much.